Hello and welcome to the SCA Cricket Show. I'm your host, Shazad Haq. Well, this is the last episode for 2011 as the league season has come to a close. We'll check out the final rounds a little bit later on. But first, let's tell you what to look forward to early 2012 as the World Cricket League comes to Singapore. The ICC World Cricket League is a series of international one-day cricket tournaments for national teams without test status. The league has two main aims. One, to provide a qualification system for the World Cup that can be accessed by all associate and affiliate members. And two, an opportunity for these sides to play international one-day matches against teams of similar standards. The league has a total of 8 divisions, with 6 teams in each division. The exception is Division 8, in which 8 teams play. It all builds up to the World Cup qualifier, which contains 12 teams, a combination of all 6 Division 1 teams, the top 4 Division 2 teams, and the best 2 Division 3 teams. Singapore is currently placed in Division 5, alongside Malaysia, Cayman Islands, Argentina, Guernsey and Bahrain. The Lion City will also host the Division 5 League in February 2012, with the 2 best performing teams promoted to Division 4 and the 2 worst relegated to Division 6. So the national team has hired former Australian cricketer Trevor Chappell to coach the side till the end of the tournament, in the hopes of finishing number 1 in the league. Trevor has previously coached Singapore in 2009, when the team hosted and played in Division 6 of the World Cricket League. Singapore won it then, and he's hoping they do the same this time round. Trevor, great to have you on the SCA Cricket Show. Can you tell us, this is your second stint back as Singapore coach. What brought you back to Singapore?
Well, I enjoyed it very much the first time, and when the opportunity arose to come again, and it didn't conflict too much with what I was doing in Australia, because this time of the year, December, January particularly, I coach at a school, so they're on holidays. So it worked out really quite well, and there's a little bit of a clash in February, but the school said go ahead and do it. I was quite keen to come back and enjoy Singapore once again.
What are the differences that you've noticed from the last time that you were here a couple of years ago?
Yeah, the senior players seem to have kept working on the things we were working on in 2009, particularly in the fielding stuff, and the intent to bowl sort of wicket to wicket. And I haven't seen a lot of the batting as yet, but hopefully some of the ideas that we're working on then will have continued through.
It's interesting, you just mentioned the bowling, and that's something you picked up on before that perhaps wasn't Singapore's strong point a couple of years ago. Is that something you're really going to be focusing on this time?
Yeah, bowling and the backing up of that with good fielding. What I noticed initially in 2009, with the bowling seemed to be wide of the stump, wide of off stump rather than at the stumps, and sort of trying to protect square of the wicket rather than bowling straight and protect straight down the ground, which we were able to adjust quite successfully last time, and hopefully we can do the same sort of thing again. But you've got to back that up. It doesn't matter how well the bowlers bowl, if the fielders aren't taking the catches or stopping the runs, it gets very hard as a bowler.
You were known as quite the tiger in the field in your playing day, and you obviously put a lot of emphasis on that. Do you think there's still a stereotype about Asian sides not being good fielding teams?
I think it's still around, and from what I've seen of different teams, I've been in Bangladesh, I've done a little bit of work in India and Pakistan, and obviously you watch the cricket when these teams are visiting Australia. There's still a little bit of room to be picked up from the Asian teams to the sort of the standard the South Africans and the Australians and the English try to set in the fielding, in just being that little bit more desperate. Obviously, a climate like Singapore, it's not that easy. You spend 6 hours or whatever, or 3 or 4 hours probably in a 50-over game out in the field. It's hard work because it's very hot. And if you're bowling as well, you end up wringing wet. And it's not that comfortable fielding, but you still got to do it. That's the nature of the game. So. And also being here for a short period of time, like 3 months that I'm here now, 2 months that I was here previously, it's difficult to change batting and bowling techniques to any great extent in a short period of time, especially when you're building up to a tournament. But the fielding and the running between the wickets are relatively easier to change. And that's always been my focus as a coach, is the fielding and the running between the wickets. If you can save 20 or 30 runs in the field and pick up 20 or 30 runs when you bat, or with good running, you're a 40 or 50 run better side without changing anything else.
You brought up an interesting point here. You're only here for 3 months. Can a coach make a difference in a short period of time before a major tournament?
It can make some difference, obviously not as much as you could if you worked from, say, a year-long period would be, you would expect you'd be able to make more progress in that time. But weather permitting, that's been a bit of a problem so far in December, is getting access to decent facilities because everything's very wet. But you can make some sort of a difference, yeah.
What are your targets for the WCL? Is it quite simply nothing less than top 2?
That's right, yeah, that's where it has to be. After the WLC 6, WCL 6 a couple of years ago, the team performed extremely well and came through in the top position. So obviously we're aiming for either that or the next best thing this time.
What are your assessment of the other teams in your group?
Well, I saw Malaysia, Bahrain, Guernsey. I think that's all of the ones in this group that I've seen previously in the WCL 6 tournament. So we know well, I don't know if they're exactly the same group of players, but they're going to be fairly close to it, you would expect. Malaysia, well, they're all very good teams. Guernsey's a very good team. The Malaysians are very good, and the Bahrain team was very good in that tournament. So we know a bit there. The Cayman Islands, I don't know much about them, and Argentina, I think, is the other team. I don't know much about them, but Cayman Islands, you would expect, being from the Caribbean, they're going to be very typical sort of calypso type cricketers. So they'll both be tough competition, I would expect.
How much are you talking to players about exploiting home conditions?
Haven't really talked too much about it at this stage. Obviously it is an advantage to be having the tournament here in Singapore, with weather conditions as well as knowing the ground conditions. A team like Guernsey, I think they struggled last time in the early part of the tournament getting acclimatised, but once they did, they played particularly well in the latter games of that last tournament. So I would assume that they're going to try and make some sort of an adjustment, get here a bit earlier, or get acclimatised as quickly as they possibly can. Malaysians, obviously, they're fairly similar conditions there as to here, so it's not a big jump for them. The Bahrain team, it's probably quite different, I would imagine. It's very hot there, but not quite so humid. And the wickets, maybe not even a lot different to here. I don't think, probably on the lower side, and less grass on their wickets. And again, the other two I'm not too familiar with. So.
Well, there's plenty more action coming up here on the SCA Cricket Show. We're going to hear from a national team player on Singapore's expectations for the World Cricket League. Welcome back. Now, the last time Singapore hosted the World Cricket League was back in 2009, when they were in Division 6. They went on to win the competition undefeated. They'll be hoping to emulate that sort of performance when they host Division 5 in 2012. Singapore have had a good showing in the World Cricket League for the last couple of years. After winning Division 6 in 2009, Singapore were promoted to Division 5. In the 2010 ICC World Cricket League Division 5 was played in Nepal, and Singapore were up against the hosts, USA, Bahrain, Fiji and Jersey. Singapore won 4 of their 5 group stage games to be placed third on the table, tied on 8 points with Nepal, who had the better run rate and were placed second. There was controversy though, as a final group match between Nepal and USA was under investigation by the ICC for crowd trouble and the calculations of net run rate, which denied Singapore promotion to Division 4. The ICC later upheld the umpire's decision, meaning Singapore finished third to stay in Division 5 and Nepal and USA were promoted. So this time round the team are leaving nothing to chance. Their preparations have begun for the tournament in February, with new coach Trevor Chappell handed the task of guiding the side to Division 4. The Singapore players are also confident of achieving their target.
Riaz, tell us what's it been like with Trevor back in the frame again?
It's been quite good actually. Trevor focuses on really small key aspects of our game. Obviously he's here for 3 months and he can't change technique or any big changes around. So we are sort of focusing on fielding, fitness, and doing the small things right.
What are your targets for this WCL 5 coming up?
I think the team is geared to sort of do the same that we did about 2 years ago. Try and win all the games and get right on the top of this WCL 5.
It's quite a tough target, isn't it, to go through 5 matches unbeaten? You've set the bar high the last time. The expectation is going to be high.
Yeah, it is going to be high, but I think with Trevor back in, the feedback was quite good about 2 years ago. I think we were a great team. Fielding was high. We were batting well. We did all the 3 aspects of cricket really well. So I think this time around we're going to do the same thing again.
You guys got promoted, of course, the last time round because you did so well in Singapore. Big disappointment in Nepal. You guys are dying to get back up there, aren't you?
Definitely, we are, actually. I mean, that last game in Nepal sort of brought us really down, and then the game against Bahrain, we were just really, really off. And now we, coming back with high spirits and probably going to go back in and try and do the same 2 years ago.
Is there any pressure playing someone like Malaysia, who you guys know like the back of your hand? Is there more pressure on you guys?
I don't think there's more pressure, but I mean, there's always to and fro. I mean, sometimes we meet Malaysia and they beat us in a few games. When we meet them, we beat them in a few games. So it's always a 50-50 chance there. Each other knowing our games really well. So yeah.
The Griffin Kinetic League 2011 has come to a close, with the final round of matches played on the weekend of December 3rd and 4th. Here's a look at what happened in Division 2. There was just one game left to play in Division 2 on 4th December between IA and NDCC, but the weather gods wouldn't have it, as the rains came pouring down after 30 overs to leave the teams and umpires no choice but to abandon the match and share the points. The promotion-relegation battle between IA and SCC Cougars was also washed out. They didn't even get a ball in. That match has been postponed till such time when the weather eases up. Up ahead, the 2011 Women's Cricket Development Camp and the finals of the Weekday Indoor Cricket League. Welcome back to the SCA Cricket Show. Now, the 2011 Women's Cricket Development Camp was held at the Kallang Cricket Ground from December 9th to the 13th, with the hope of promoting the game amongst the fairer sex in Singapore. The 4-day camp was for girls aged 15 to 18 years old, who are Singapore citizens or permanent residents. The camp was led by former Australian national cricketer Charlotte Anveld, and was also a recruitment exercise for the Asian Cricket Council's Under-19 2020 tournament. Anveld, who's the female participation officer and performance analyst for Australian team ACT Meteors, held an eye-opening training session with the participants, hoping to increase the level of play and participation in women's cricket in Singapore. Charlotte gave plenty of tips and strategies and taught each player how to intelligently achieve the goals set in a game of cricket. Charlotte assigned each player tasks according to their strengths and capabilities. She explained how confidence and a good mindset are the key weapons for any sports person. There was a positive and immediate change felt by the players.
It's really fun because I learned lots of new skills of cricket and different techniques, and I also improved in my batting and bowling. I learned how to bat properly, like the different techniques and how to basically bat like professional. It's good that we have these kind of training camps because it helps us as a cricketer, it helps us to become a better one, and it's very good.
Shakti Hammond started with the idea of the camp. She got me involved when I was over here for a holiday in April, and I had a session with the girls and it kind of went from there, and now it's turned into a 5-day development camp. We've got some fantastic young talent in Singapore here. We want cricket to be Singapore's favourite sport, and hopefully in a couple of years' time that'll happen. But we just want to make people aware that cricket is a game, it's a fun game, and this development camp, we want the girls to end up at the Under-19 tournament over in Kuwait in February, so we're getting the girls' skills trained up for that. We're looking at batting, bowling and fielding, coming up with some new ideas that they may not have come across before, improving on their skills they already have, and definitely fitness is playing a pretty good part as well. I think there's some very young young girls here that are very talented. You know, we've seen you know, with Tanisha and I think it's Pravita. You know, they're two very talented young ladies, and I think they can go on to not only play for Singapore, but you know, potentially state cricket in countries like Australia and England. Obviously, Australia's, you know, people play it in their backyards, whereas over here it's not one of those games. It's a game that, you know, obviously Singapore cricket want to make the Singaporeans aware of, and hopefully, you know, increase participation across the board.
Now to indoor cricket, and the final rounds of the weekday league were recently concluded. Here's how it turned out. 2 matches were played at the cage in Kallang, and the first game was between Organised Chaos and BK Durians. Organised Chaos batted first, making 107 for 6. The third pairing of Mike and Pavan Patel working very well together with a 35-run stand. But it was an all-round effort from the side, as the first 3 pairs all got 30-plus partnerships, and the final pair didn't have to bat at all. James Riley was their best bat with 22. This one turned out to be a fairly one-sided affair, as BK Durians managed just 65 for a whopping 10 wickets. The opening pairing of Ladit Silva and Abhishant B had the best partnership with 29. Ladit also getting the most individual runs with 20. But in the end, the target proved too large for BK Durians, especially with them frequently losing wickets. Organised Chaos's Mike took 3 wickets to hand his team a 42-run win. Match was played between Octopus and Power Play. This was a closely fought match, with Power Play making 90 for 5 after opting to bat first. The third partnership between Deep Banerjee and Kartik Subramaniam was impressive, as they shared a 38-run stand. Kartik also top scoring with 22. Octopus's Kunal Chowdhury had their team's best bowling figures of 2 for 8. In their reply, Octopus scored 95 and lost just 1 wicket in the process. The second pair of Nagaraj and MV Niranjan kept the scoreline ticking with a 32-run partnership. Opener Kunal Chowdhury put on an all-round performance, getting the most individual runs with 18. The problem was Power Play's bowling, which couldn't really get amongst the wickets. David van der Wolf claiming the only wicket of the innings, as Octopus clinched a 5-run win. And that meant Octopus were crowned champions of the Weekday Indoor Cricket League Season 6. Power Play had to settle for runners-up. Organised Chaos's win saw them clinch their Plate Champions title. Next up, we get to know the recently appointed Singapore coach, Trevor Chappell, a little better.
Hi, I'm Trevor Chappell and you're watching the SCA Cricket Show.
Welcome back. Singapore coach Trevor Chappell is a former Australian international and a member of one of Australia's most prominent cricketing families. He's the youngest of the Chappell brothers, and he sat down with us in this exclusive interview to tell us about growing up in the Chappell household and his cricketing career.
Trevor, was there any choice in your family apart from being a professional cricketer when you were growing up?
No, not a lot of choice. From my father was a keen cricketer. My mother's father captained and played for Australia in the 1920s. So I don't think there was a lot of choice. It was always Dad's ambition that his 3 sons would... There was 2 things actually. One was cricket and one was baseball. That was what the Chappell household existed on. Baseball in those days in Australia was played in the winter. It's now played in the summer, so it wouldn't be a choice these days. So, and when it did change, it was cricket was the first choice. Although we all loved baseball as kids just as much as we loved the cricket. But you're right, there was from a very early age we were getting coached, and Dad always used a hard cricket ball with us because he figured that we had to understand that a cricket ball hurts when it hits you, so you better learn how to use that piece of wood to stop it hitting you.
I'd imagine your childhood was spent in the backyard, in the nets, with the brothers all day long in the summer especially.
Particularly, yeah. Probably 9 months of the year in Adelaide. There was about 3 months where in the winter time where it was probably a bit wet to prepare a turf. We had a very nice turf wicket in the backyard as well. So probably in the time that I played, one of the best wickets that I played on, I think, in the backyard. There wasn't a lot of work from Ian and Greg to prepare that. It was mainly Dad and I that did all the work in mowing and rolling and watering. But although I can't be unfair to Greg, he used to water it a bit when he was bowling and somebody else was batting.
Very convenient for him. How easy or difficult was it growing up with 2 older established brothers who are international cricketers?
It's hard to say really, because never knew anything else. And fortunately, probably, I never really thought that much about it then. I mean, I just loved playing cricket and I wanted to play cricket. I wasn't sort of thinking, well, how hard's it going to be? Because there's 9 years difference between Ian and I, and about just over 4 years between Greg and I. So they were a bit more always ahead. So by the time I was 12 or 13, they were both playing first-class cricket for South Australia. And I was just loving playing cricket, and I hadn't really thought, well, how much more difficult is it going to make it with them playing for me? I mean, I want to do that as well. How much more difficult is it going to be? I don't know. And I, for one reason or other, didn't think that much about it, and that was probably a good thing.
You ended up playing 3 test matches for Australia back in 1981. Did you ever feel that perhaps you should have been given more of a go?
I would love to have played more tests. My performances in those test matches weren't overly outstanding, but I played a couple of innings that, although they didn't produce a lot of runs, they showed a bit of grit and determination to stay in there on what were fairly difficult wickets in that series. The first test at Nottingham and the third test at Leeds were not easy wickets. I guess everybody that's ever played a handful of game 1 or 2 or 3 games has always thought, I wish I'd got a bit more go, or I should have got a bit more of a go. Some do, some don't. That's the way it goes.
Did you get the impression that you were pegged as a bit more of a one-day player?
Possibly, yeah. I played obviously a lot more one-day cricket. I think I played about 20 one-dayers for Australia, and then I started in the one-day side and played the 3 tests sort of in the middle of that. I probably was more suited to the one-day game, both bowling, by bowling and batting and fielding.
Well, once you stopped playing cricket, was coaching the natural progression for you?
It didn't happen right away. When I'd finished, I was thinking, now I've got to build some other sort of a career, and was trying to do that for a few years. I found that I didn't like work all that much, particularly if it was in an office. I'd been outside playing cricket all the time and found it difficult to put on a suit and tie and go into an office. And then the coaching came a bit later, a bit by accident. I wasn't, because as a player I hadn't been that keen on coaching, but I've found the further I've got away from playing, then the more interested I've become in coaching. And I love coaching now, particularly the sort of developmental side of it. Not so much, I'm not that ambitious to coach an international side. I did the Bangladesh job briefly, but I saw that more as a development sort of a role as well. It was right at the start of their test playing status, and I'd been coaching at schools for a number of years at that stage, and the kids there were sort of 16, 17, 18 years of age, and the majority of the Bangladesh players were also 18, 19 sort of age group, and plus a few older players. So it progressed gradually, wasn't a seamless sort of a move straight from playing to coaching, and even going to Sri Lanka initially, then going to Bangladesh, and then other jobs that I've done around the place, such as this Singapore one, of not things that I've sort of chased after. They've sort of come out of the blue, but I've seen them as great opportunities, both as a coach and also from a life point of view, to go to different places and experience life as it is for other people.
Before we let you go, we've got to mention the underarm bowling. Are you really sick of hearing about it?
Yes.
Are you quite glad that whenever new controversies come up in cricket, that might just diminish the effect of what happened 30 years ago?
Well, I'm waiting for that to happen. There's certain things have happened that you think, well, yeah, it might take the heat off a bit, but it doesn't seem to. It keeps cropping up fairly regularly. I've got used to the fact of it now after 30 years, so And at some point, I'm not sure at what point it was, I decided I'm better off to go along with it rather than fight against it. It's not going to work fighting against it. I might as well go along for the ride.
Quite interesting. Tony Gregg at the time was actually saying that it should have actually gone for it. Brendan McCutcheon should have gone for it instead of throwing his bat away. What do you think of that statement?
Yeah, he just didn't have a go. I gave him a nice easy one along the ground. He didn't even have a go at it.
It's good. It's funny because the Kiwis themselves laughed about it just a couple hours later, and they were joking about how they could have done it themselves and gone for the 6. So if they laughed about it, were you quite surprised at the reaction that happened to the rest around the world?
Yeah, it has been. I've done quite a few functions over the last 30 years with Brian McKechnie. At the time I bowled him the underarm, I probably had met him. I don't really remember, but I obviously didn't know him all that well. But I've got to know him over the last 30 years quite well, and he's mentioned that fact a number of times in their different interviews and that we've done. That they thought, oh well, it's happened, it's gone, sort of thing. But it's and people in Australia say, oh, it's the New Zealand press that keep promoting, but it's not. It's the Australian press that keep bringing it up. And I just wish they'd get over it.
Well, Trevor, it's been a real pleasure having you on the SCA Cricket Show. Best of luck with the Singapore team.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's just about it for this episode and 2011. We really hope you've enjoyed this season. Plenty to look forward to in 2012, of course, when the World Cricket League will be right here in Singapore. Do come down and give your support. You can always give us your feedback to the email at the bottom of your screen. For now, though, we're going to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. On behalf of all the team here at the SCA Cricket Show, it's goodbye.